Hello, hello. Welcome to this week's Lunch and Learn. Today we're going to talk about sorting out things in life. This is my favorite tool to do that. This is called the 4Ns. It's actually something I've taught before in my Facebook group too. So if you're watching this back on recording, it could be that you've seen little bits of this before, but in talking with people over the last couple of weeks, it feels like this is something we all need right now. And so this is really about simplifying. So the first thing you need to do is get your to-do list. And if you don't have it, you can take a couple of minutes and sort of just dump out all the stuff in your head onto paper. Because if you're anything like me, like I have my to-do list, it's over here. And then I have some sticky notes. And then I have some stuff floating around in my brain. And I have some little scraps of paper that I'm not going to show you because it's embarrassing. And all these other things that actually make up my to do list, put them all in one place first. Let's get them all together. And then the next thing you need is your goal. Because this is where to do lists go wrong, actually. Your to do list goes wrong when you don't keep your goal in it. That's when we start doing all the things and we lose track of which things matter. Because unless we're comparing them to something, how do you know? Like things can't matter more than each other if we don't know what we're trying to achieve. So when you have 26,000 things on your to-do list and they all seem equally important, it's because you've lost sight of what your larger goal is. So for me, one of the things that I tend to do is on my list for the week, and it is stellarly long, my list for every week, so I'm doing lots of different things, is I always put the goal of what I'm trying to do right now at the very top. And so what it does is sort of reconnect me to what it is I'm actually trying to do in any given week. And pretty much it's the same every week. But it helps me to, you know, make sure I'm like, it's actually visible what I'm trying to do. And so I get to go like, oh, wait, if I do this thing, does it matter more than this thing right now? What matters more? Okay. So once you have your list and it's all the things and you have your goal, we move into sorting. So there are 4 N's, big shocker. And we're going to do them backwards. Number 4s are not mine. Number 3 is never. Number 2 is next. And number 1 is now. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through your list and number things. We're going to start backwards. So you're going to start with 4s. 4s are the hardest thing to label because you feel like everything is on your list is yours, but actually that is almost never the case. I've actually never done this for myself or for a client and not had 4s come up. So if you go through and you're like, yep, none of these are 4s, you're lying to yourself. So items are a 4 if they are out of your control, if they can and should be delegated, if they are less a thing to do than something you are worrying about that belongs to someone else. Like every now and then I'll have something on my list that is like, remind so and so to do X. Well, actually, like so and so just needs to do X. That doesn't belong on my list. That's not mine. There are other times where, like, I have something on my list right now to finalize a plan with someone, but the next step in that plan that has to be done isn't mine to do. So really the note is on my list, but it's not even a thing that is in my control. I'm not doing that step. I have a note about talking to the accountant about taxes, but like I can't do that until the taxes are done and I don't do taxes. So he's got to do that part. All of these things that are other people's tasks that are not within your control, they get a 4 on your list. So go down through your list and number things with 4s that are 4s. I have one client that always does like 4s in blue, 3s in green. Like give them a color if that helps you so that you can pick them out more easily. Fours are ultimately the guiding principle here is that there are things that are on your list, but really shouldn't be. They're not yours. They belong on someone else's list. So you can feel free to go write them on someone else's list, but you have to take them off of your own. Okay, so take a minute, go through, put down all fours. Okay, and if you need to push pause, do that. All right, the next list items are threes. Threes are nevers. Here's the thing, we all have threes on the list also. I know that you're like, well, but there's not things on my list that I never want to do. These are all things I want to do. And that's exactly what threes are. Wants don't go on to-do lists necessarily. Threes are things that you want but don't have to do. Things you feel like, and this is a big one, you should do, ought to do, or are obligated to do. Things that are out of step with your goal, or things that are old habits that you don't need anymore. So for example, I have this thing that will find its way onto my list every now and then about participating in posting in other people's groups. Like, it's something I feel like I ought to do. It's not something I actually want to do. So then what happens is during the course of the week, I have it on my list and it never gets done. And then I feel bad because it never gets done because it's something I feel like I ought to do, but it's not actually something I want to do. And it's just like a giant cluster of crazy, right? I'm making myself feel like I'm not accomplishing as much because I put something on my list I never intended to do. So there are threes on your list. If you look at your list and there are things on there that you're like, oh, that is the last thing I want to do, it's an ever. Like, unless it's go to the dentist someday. You know what I mean? Like, there are things we all have to do we don't love, but that they are not absolute requirements, like doing your taxes. And you still have the like, ugh, everything but that, I'm never going to do that. Then take it off the list. You are the boss of your business. You are the boss of your time. You are the boss of your life. You don't want to do that thing that way? Great, don't do that. Like, I know for now, I put on my list that I need to ride on the Peloton bike 3 times a week. I never do that because I can do it twice a week, and the third time I'm always like, oh, no more, it's enough. So I stopped because I don't want to do that 3 times a week. It feels like torture. I can do it once for sure, and maybe even twice if I'm feeling crazy, but it's never going to be 3. It's just not. And when I put that on my list, it makes me feel like a failure when I don't get it. And I'm not doing that to myself. So the guiding principles of threes are things that are not worthy of your time. When you compare them with your goal, they don't match up. So, if we think to things you want to do, I want to spend some time on thinking through one thing I want to plan in my other business. And it was something I had scheduled into my calendar this week, and I haven't done because when I looked at what my goal for the week was, it actually didn't have anything to do with it. So it came off the list. I actually crossed it off because it's not something that's worth my time right now. It's not going to move forward when I want to move forward. It doesn't go with my goal. When you compare, if something has no relationship to your goal, it doesn't belong on the list right now. Okay, so that's 4s and 3s. Now we get to the good stuff. 2s. 2s are things you need to do, but not today. They are things you want to do, but something else has to happen first. They're like second steps. They are nice to have when you have time. And there are things that are going to naturally happen when something else is finished. So like for me, the way I think about it is the example that's here. It's like, I want to put money in a bank account, but before I do that, I have to have the bank account. So actually the to-do item is get the bank account. And then once I have it, I can make the to-do to put money in it. But I can't do that unless I have the bank account. And what we do to ourselves a lot of times is we put things on our to-do list that are 46 steps. It's like save more money for X. Like, well, in order to save the money, I have to figure out what the money I'm saving is. I have to figure out where I'm going to put it. I have to figure out a process for getting it there. I have to figure out how often I'm going to do that. Like, there's a lot of steps in there. So maybe we should just start with the first one. Like, all you need to start with is the first step at any given moment. You don't need to do all the steps. And that's why we have big projects we don't tackle, because we look at them as one step when they're actually 46. So go through your list and list next to the items that are twos. I'm pretty good about twos on my list. I'm trying to look at mine right now to see if there are some examples. I am in the process of trying to write a one page for speaking opportunities. Like, I have somebody to ask me for one, but the model I have for it is not the version I want right now. So my to-do item right now, I actually changed it this week, it said finish speaker one page, but actually it's find a speaker one page format I like. That's my first item. So the finished speaker one page actually is kind of a 2 on my list. It's something I need to do, but it's not something I need to do right this second. There are always going to be things that are second steps. So take a look through your list and look for the second steps. Because here's the problem, just like with threes that you're never going to do, you are not going to get to these. And sometimes what happens is we just list all the things in order, and not necessarily in the order they have to happen, but we just list them in the order they fall out of our brain. And so something that is a second step will be on your list before a first step. And you won't necessarily connect them together. And you'll look at that thing that you're not doing yet and think like, oh crap, I failed. But you didn't, because you have to do something else first. So it actually doesn't need to be on there as an item yet. It doesn't belong. So twos are important. But the guiding principle is, if you don't do them today, they don't impact your goal today. They don't have a driving force behind you reaching your goals right this second. I think of them as like, yes, but not today things. Like, do I need to do that? Yes, but not today. Means it's a 2. Like, I need to finish the speaker one page. Yes, but I don't need to do it today. It's not due for 2 weeks. So I don't have to do it right now. Okay. Everything else that is on your list is a 1. Ones are really vital. And it could be that you're going to go through your list now and go to label things ones, and you're going to be like, well, but wait, these aren't now things, and they should be some other number. So items are a 1 if they are clearly connected to your goal. Like, they actually, like, you go like, oh yeah, that would help me move you forward now. They definitely move you forward. They are needs rather than nice to have, and they can be done now. One of the examples of something that a lot of people think is a 1 and is not is like putting in a CRM system in your business. I know the people that sell you CRM systems will tell you it's a 1, but honestly, it's a nice to have for so many of us, especially if you're at the start of business and you have, just a handful of clients. Like, that's a spreadsheet. That's not a CRM. That's you solving a problem you don't have yet. And I'm all for being ahead of the game, but I don't vote for skipping your problems, right? Like, solve the problem you have right now. The problem you have right now is just keeping track of data. The problem you might have someday is doing that in a more robust way with reporting and lots of other bells and whistles. Great. But that's not the problem you have yet. So solve the problem you have today. That's a now thing. It moves you forward now. It helps you organize what you're doing with your clients, with your customers now. And it's not like it hasn't jumped into the nice to have. It moves you forward in this moment and solves the problem you have. And then here's the thing. Ones are the only things that matter right now. You get to, when you are finished doing this exercise, rewrite your to-do list with only the things that are 1s. And I will tell you, I've done this exercise with people time and time and time again. And what happens when they get to the end is the vast majority of the time, what's left will fit on a Post-it note and not by writing in like I do, like in tiny directions and little words with arrows. The ones, are probably only a handful of things because we can only really do a handful of things at once well anyways. And that's the point of this. The point is cutting out 75% of the noise to get to the 25% that matters. And that's what the ones here are. What are the things that actually move you forward today? Okay, so then here's the question I get all the time. But when do you get to the twos? Because I want to get to them. So here's what happens. It's almost like in a vending machine. When you go to a vending machine and you hit the little buttons and the pretzels fall out to the bottom, what happens? The pretzels that were behind it scooch up into the front. So what happens with the twos, because the fours never come back to your list. They weren't yours. The threes never come back to your list because they are things you're never going to do. The twos, though, need a place. So when you take a one off the list, when it's like, check, done, you can move a two in to replace it, just like the pretzels come into the front of the machine. Okay? When you do that, that's why it's called next. So when something gets completed, when I have the right format for the speaker one sheet that I feel good about it, then I can finish it. But until then, I can't do the two, which is finish it, right? So for me, that is how this works best. All right, so you have been through all the pieces. This is how you find me, okay? If you need help with doing this kind of list, as I said, this is something I've done with clients countless times. And part of the work I do as a coach is really help keep them honest and tied to this. So when things start to come up for clients like, oh, look at that shiny number 4 over there. That one's not mine, but I'd love to try it. Or this is a number 2 that I'm not ready for yet, but I'm still going to try to spend, 6 hours of my week on it. Like my job is to help them notice that. Okay. That's part of the work I do with clients is keeping to these 3 or 4 things that really matter and not getting lost in the 47,000 thing to-do list. We narrow, we don't take in all the noise. We keep it at 25%. So you can find me in my group, which is Teachers in Business. You can find me on the podcast there, website, Facebook, all the things. And if you want to schedule a time to talk, please do. I always have time for you. So my hope is today that you'll walk away and try this with your to-do list, or that you've been doing it as we go. And I'd love to hear how it goes. So send me a message, send me a Facebook message, drop a comment, do what you need to do, and hopefully it was helpful. With this, I sent you the worksheets also, so if you want to use those, great.